What up, Dragon Ballers? This is going to be my episode review for Dragon Ball Daima episode number 10 and 11. This is going to be a double feature. We're going to be going over episode 10 and 11. I'm going to start with episode 10, review the episode, give my thoughts. Then we'll jump into episode 11. We'll review it, then I'll give my thoughts. I'll just tell you right now, I picked a bad time to be busy last week. I was not feeling well and I was busy. Couldn't make the video, so we're just going to double up here. And there's a lot of lore building that's happening in episode 10 alone, so let's see how episode 11 also fares after. If you guys have been enjoying all the Daima content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. I'm going to be covering the entire series, so full spoilers ahead. If you guys want to watch the other videos, there's already a playlist on the channel. Without further ado, let's jump in. All right, episode 10 is called Ocean, and we begin the episode a little bit after the events of episode 9's end. Majin Ku is now standing in front of Tamagami 1 with Rinsu standing in the background, proudly watching. Tamagami floats down and approaches. The two introduce themselves, and the fight begins. Ku begins with some very weird and unorthodox moves. For a second, I could have sworn I was looking at Hercule. Hercule with his build-up right before he gets bodied by Cell. It's sort of the same vibe that I was getting from the initial Majin Ku movements. And as the fight begins, he starts firing energy blasts. He starts doing all sorts of spins and twirls. Nothing works. Tamagami 1, we're going to call him T1 for the sake of this video. T1 is able to easily dodge and parry and stop everything. Now, as the fight is continuing on, we actually switch back to Goku and friends who have now approached Warp. And as they're going through, Goku has to have pointy ears once again. Warp asks them why they don't look like Gendarmerie after having provided a pin for a Gendarmerie plane. Pansy quickly says that they are actually family members of some of the Gendarmerie. Warp seems to accept it, so that's good. We then switch to Vegeta's crew as they're flying. Bulma is admiring how healthy her skin looks. I'm assuming this is probably from some spa treatment or some sort of skincare routine that she had at their accommodations. They stayed at a hotel or something, maybe. Bulma then jokes about how she might potentially want to just stay this young, at which point Hybis quickly and candidly responds, saying that she could be his girlfriend. You know, Vegeta wasn't going to be too happy about that. He then yells at Hybis, telling him that they're already married. Hybis then responds with, I don't mind. Bulma then continues to joke and says that Vegeta should wish to return back to an adult form, but leave Bulma as she is. Vegeta obviously doesn't agree and starts freaking out. Hybis then comes back again and says, oh, it must be because Vegeta likes big boobs, right? Dude, this guy is unhinged. He's just saying whatever he's thinking. Based on Vegeta's heated reaction, Piccolo then chimes in and says, wow, looks like Hybis is right. It was just the most out of left field, random, unhinged moment. It was funny though. I was not expecting that. And then after this ridiculous scene, we then go back to Majin Ku versus T1. Ku continues to throw some of the randomest, weirdest moves I've ever seen against Tamagami. Nothing seems to work. At this point, I started to now think, this really feels like what someone would do when they're button mashing in a fighting game. Because that's how it looked. The movements are so last minute, unorthodox, offbeat. If I didn't know any better, it's like Raygun from the Olympics. Oh, and then we switch back to Goku's crew. So we're just kind of going back and forth all over the place. Now with Goku's crew having entered the second demon world, they're speeding through the air with the air being less dense. Shin then asks about the Krakens, if they still exist. Glorio says, yes, there's a lot of them. Krakens are basically giant sea creatures that are to be feared because they're enormous, they're very powerful, and they could pose a problem if a ship were to fly too low to the sea level. As they're discussing this, the plane then gets attacked by a fleet of Gendarmerie planes. Glorio tries to shake them off in the clouds, but to no avail, and they get shot down. Goku then flies out of the falling plane, flies towards the nearby planes, and begins taking them all out. Goma, watching this from a distance, sees all of this stuff unfolding and begins freaking out at Goku's strength. He then commands the entire fleet, all of the members of the Gendarmerie from the first demon world, to intercept before Goku and friends reach the first demon world. As the damaged ship is now flying right above the surface of the water, a giant Kraken appears from underneath and grabs the ship with a tentacle. I kind of thought for a moment they were actually going to be going into the Kraken and there was going to be a whole episode where they're like inside the belly of the beast. But what ends up happening is the tentacle begins to crush the actual plane while everyone is able to evacuate quickly. But then Pansy jumps back into the plane, having forgotten a very valuable item. Goku barely manages to fly back in and escape with Pansy before the entire ship is consumed by the Kraken and goes underwater. Turns out that valuable item that she retrieved was the Dragon Ball, so it was kind of a good thing that she was quick on her feet. After all the commotion, the crew decide to take a break, so they decide to stop by the nearby planet that is actually the former Namekian homeworld. And it looks like a very desolate, dry version of the planet Namek that we've grown accustomed to in Dragon Ball Z. And then we go back to the Ku Tamagami fight, where again, nothing has happened. Tamagami 1 is unharmed, Arinsu is completely shocked, and Ku is getting more and more desperate. It's clear at this point that Majin Ku is completely outmatched, and Tamagami 1 is just constantly teleporting behind him at every turn. He can't do anything, he can't stop him. And then after this realization, we suddenly switch back to Goku's crew, who then land on the old Namekian world. And at this point, Goku's hungry, shocker. But since they have no food, since the plane was destroyed, all he has left is his little bag of bug items that they got from the beginning of the series. Goku decides to eat the revive bug, the one that is essentially the sensu bean equivalent. He eats it and he fills back up, so he's now full of energy again. After eating the revive bug, Goku then senses that the others have arrived in the second world and begins to fly over to them. And then we go back to Majin Ku, who is now exhausted while T1 is completely unscathed. At this point, Arinsu is checked out. She's given up. She knows he's worthless. Majin Ku then surrenders. He just says, I lose. I can't beat you. Arinsu and Ku fly off. In the plane, Arinsu then tells Majin Ku, you're fired. You're done. We then go back to the group. Goku is able to meet up with Vegeta and everyone. They all fly to the old Namekian world. Piccolo then remarks about how this place feels pleasant and familiar, which makes sense considering this is the spitting image of planet Namek. But this is where things get crazy, because we learn from Shin that the Demon Kings used to use Namekians as basically little more than slaves. And then he elaborates even further by going into some deep lore building. So sit tight. This is where it gets crazy. A long time ago, a good Supreme Demon King wanted to expand the demon realm. So he ordered the Super Majin Rimus to create a universe. So we then see this character. He has the same sort of body type as Zeno, only his face is not childish. It's more of an aged character. On his chest, he seems to have, I think, an S symbol. I don't know what that symbol is. He's wearing a cape. He basically looks like a Zeno archetype, but he's older. And this is the being that created the universe and apparently created the multiverse. Because then Shin proceeds to say, as various universes were created, Majin began moving outward towards those other universes. And as we know, there are only 12 universes in the multiverse. We know this from Dragon Ball Super. So various universes would mean either from 2 to 12. And Shin also says that Rimus is the highest authority in the universe. It was Dabura's father, Abura, who restricted the use of warp, because originally warp was used very freely to travel interdimensionally. But Abura stopped that because he wanted to reduce the possibility of outside threats. Abura is different from the good demon lord that they were referring to earlier. But after Abura's actions, it was some of those Glins that were chosen by Rimus to then become Supreme Kais of the various universes. And finally, Shin tells Bulma that the Glins were all born from trees, but also all 5 of those Glind trees are now dead, meaning they will eventually go extinct, which was kind of a depressing revelation to find out about. But anyway, after all of that lore building, the group head out to find the next Tamagami. And as they all enter the plane and they're getting ready to take off, we see a being walking slowly towards the plane. It's Neva. Neva's slowly walking toward the plane. Is he going to make it in time? I don't know, but he's got a very suspicious and, quite frankly, little scary grin on his face. Is he about to do something? I don't know. But that's where the episode ends. So I can safely say that this episode had me on the edge of my seat from start to finish. Given how sporadic and how jarring the transitions were back and forth. That's just a personal gripe. I found myself just constantly on edge. We had an ongoing fight between what was potentially going to be the new big bad and one of the Guardians, one of the characters who we've kind of established as the most powerful beings in this little mini series. And then we also had these little moments where Goku and Vegeta's group are trying to get back together. They finally do. Then we get this massive info dump that it doesn't unravel the universe more, but it really just builds upon stuff that we've already learned. But it also brings in some questions, like Rymus. The way that they were introducing Rymus in that narration, I don't know, maybe it was the translation that was just off, but it gave the impression that there might have been more than one. Is Rymus the name of the being? Is Rymus a position? Based on his physiology, he looks so similar to Zeno. Is there some relation between the two? Who is stronger? The one who oversees the multiverse or the one who created the universes themselves? We've seen what Zeno can do. Zeno has the ability to erase timelines, eliminate existences. If this guy can create universes, is this Rymus guy capable of also deleting them? Did Rymus give his throne to Zeno because whatever? I have no idea. And so those are the types of questions that I'm sure a lot of you guys have. Now, in terms of where this guy would have been all of this time, that's another important question that I'm hoping we'll get answers to. So I don't know. Does that anger some people? Perhaps. It doesn't bother me. I just want answers. Like, it doesn't bother me that we have more questions. It's just that I want to know now. That's all. So I would say, all things considered, overall, I'm going to give this episode a B. I do feel like not letting the Majin Ku fight just last a little bit longer by having it all in one stretch is my own personal gripe. It's not something that you guys necessarily may have to agree with, which is totally fine. This is just my own personal opinion on it. But I feel like that kind of took me out of it because I cared more about that fight than I did about Goku and friends getting chased by planes. We know they're not going to die. We know nothing's going to happen to them. So who cares? I really just wanted to see more Majin Ku. And I kind of found that to be, now that I'm thinking about it, the helter skelter crazy improv style fighting that he did was great. It was unique. We've never seen that before. You have the usual sort of moves that these fighters will do, but this guy was just all over the place, and I kind of dig it, and I kind of appreciate it, and I kind of want more. So yeah, I'm gonna give this a strong, solid B or B plus, one of those two. But now it just has me curious as to how the next episode is gonna go, because I don't know if my brain can handle more lore. I feel like that's enough. It did answer a big question for why these Kais were designated as the Kais, but at the same time, the Supreme Kais are the gods of creation. So this Rymus had the power to designate characters as beings of creation. So then how does the being of destruction come from that? Did Rymus create that? Or was there an opposing force that enacted their will in response to Rymus creating gods of creation? I don't know. Very interesting. Let me know your theories. I'm sure some of you guys know more than I do because I am 1 week late to this episode review. So if you guys want to chime in, feel free to do so. I don't know everything about this stuff. I'm just a fan who watches the episodes. So I still like it though. All right, now let's move on to episode 11 called Legend. Neva slowly approaches the plane and everyone exits the plane to step out and meet him. Neva notices that Glory was holding a Dragon Ball and then starts dancing like a madman, like he's drunk, like he's senile. Piccolo steps forward and calls him out on his BS, telling him to stop acting dumb, stop playing senile. He then asks if he is the legendary Namek Neva. Neva immediately identifies Piccolo as a rare warrior Namek, and then says that he reminds him of Katats. Now that name wouldn't normally mean anything, but soon after saying that name, Piccolo responds and says that's his father. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So there we go. That is the huge revelation from this episode. Something that we have not known for 30 years, maybe more, however long it's been. We have never known the nameless Namek that came to Earth. Now we know the name. Remember, this is Piccolo Jr. that we have here. Our Piccolo is Piccolo Jr. His father is Demon King Piccolo, sure, but Demon King Piccolo was never originally Demon King Piccolo. Piccolo and Kami were once one. They were a nameless Namek. We didn't know the name, and the name is now revealed to be Katats. I don't know if that's a play on anything, Let me know if you guys know about that. But it's interesting that we find out. And this is never mentioned in Dragon Ball Super. So one question that I immediately have is, does Piccolo know this through the events of Super? I don't think it's ever brought up to where we could argue that he did or he did not know it. So I guess that's fine, but it's still fascinating that we find out through these circumstances. Neva asks Piccolo what he's doing here, and Piccolo immediately calls him out again by saying that Neva knew that this was going to happen. He intentionally went with Goma to Earth and used the Dragon Balls. Piccolo asks why they were turned into children. Neva reveals it was Goma's request as a way to keep them from invading the demon realm and interfering with his plans. Piccolo then asks if Neva would have gone with Goma's wish had it been different. Neva says he would have played senile to trick him. So clearly, Neva is very much aware of what is going on. So he would have easily played Goma based on this response. So far, I'm not buying it. Piccolo asks if Neva predicted Dende being taken. Neva says yes. What if he killed Dende? Neva responds, Nameks are too valuable, he wouldn't kill him. Pansy then steps in and asks if Neva created the Tamagamis. Neva says, yeah, pretty much. She then says that Neva could have overthrown Goma with that sort of power. Neva responds by saying that Nameks must not use their power for conflict. The entire group then immediately stares at Piccolo, who is flustered, which is hilarious. But that's an interesting comment. Nameks must not use their power for conflict. So they are not allowed to wage any sort of battle with anyone. So then what does that mean for warrior Nameks? What does that mean in general? Glorio then insists that they leave as soon as possible. Neva asks to come along as he can speak Namekian, which will be necessary to call upon Shenron once the Demon Dragon Balls are collected. Goku asks Piccolo if he can actually speak Namekian, but Piccolo says he never learned it as he has been living on Earth for too long. Bro's Earthwashed is basically what he said. Neva joins, and I don't trust it. And I suspect Neva will actually probably mean certain trouble for Glorio too, because throughout this exchange with Piccolo, we learned that both Piccolo and Neva, and frankly all Namekians, are able to do a lot more than they originally say. So I have a feeling that Glorio's double cross might be unraveled by the combination of Piccolo's hearing and Neva's just overall intuition and knowledge and whatnot. Meanwhile, we go back to Arinsu, who is now with Marba working on a new concoction. Arinsu claims that maybe they didn't use enough essence of Buu, which is why Majin Ku is so defective. So for the new concoction, Marba pours the rest of the essence of Buu along with Arinsu's spit and the Cybermen seed. This time they plant the seed even deeper in the solidified concoction, which is apparently a hazard, but they need to take the chance because they need all the power that they can get. As the solution manifests, out comes a chunkier version of Ku, introducing Majin Du. Really? Majin Du? Ku? What's the next one gonna be? Fu? Ru? Poo? Majin Poo! So now we got a Walmart Kid Buu, and we got a Walmart Fat Buu. Du lets out a roar and asks for chocolate. Kid Buu. Ku then runs off, buys some chocolate, brings it back. He hands it to its brother, and the two start fighting over the chocolate. So you start to see some of the clumsiness, the essence of Buu really still exists in there. The clumsiness, the goofing around is still there. Arinsu then commands Du to fight Tamagami 1. Then we switch back. Back on the plane, Vegeta tells Goku that he will be fighting the next Tamagami. And this is exactly what I want to see. Yes, I want to see Vegeta fight, not Goku. They reach the island where Tamagami 2 resides. Meanwhile, Arinsu and Du also reach Tamagami 1. Du challenges Tamagami 1 to a fight, and he begins by actually using some pretty crazy speed and manages to land a hit to surprise Tamagami 1. So again, the theme of unorthodox, unpredictable, sort of all over the place movement takes hold here. Only difference is Majin Du is able to do it a lot more effectively and actually in a much more similar way to the Fat Buu that we're used to. I feel like it's actually more of a Fat Buu slash Super Buu, the way he's rebounding and bouncing off of the walls and stuff. Regardless, it works, and he's able to make contact with Tamagami 1 multiple times. Tamagami 1 is confused. As Vegeta approaches Tamagami 2, while watching from surveillance, Degesu comments that at least the spiky-haired kid isn't going to fight. He's referencing Goku. Goma then yells back saying, "You idiot, This guy's also spiky haired, which I love. That was a great moment. Part of what made this episode more satisfying for me was also the reactions from Goma. I think Goma's probably one of my favorite villain. Actually, he's my favorite. I think he's my favorite of all the villain characters so far. Goma's my favorite. This Tamagami is also slender and built similar to Tamagami 1. The only difference is that he's wielding a trident as opposed to a hammer or a sword. When Vegeta challenges him, Tamagami 2 says, "You're just a child. Go back home and suckle on your mother's teat." That is the quote. Bro, chill. What is it with this anime all of a sudden and teats and boobs? What's going on? What happened? Tamagami 2 notices Neva in the distance watching and then realizes that Vegeta is actually a serious contender. He then apologizes and the two begin the fight. The fight starts and there's no music, just pure intensity, and I love it. Vegeta and Tamagami 2 go at it, but Vegeta quickly manages to get in close and begin comboing away, and it's incredibly well animated. We get a great shot of Goma's reaction to the fight too, which is insanely hilarious. Then Tamagami 2 manages to slice Vegeta's face with the trident, leaving a bleeding cut across the cheek, and Vegeta is pissed. We then immediately switch to Do as he's continuing to confuse and get solid shots in on Tamagami 1. After a few maneuvers, he begins comboing Tamagami 1 with key rapid fire blasts. And then Vegeta starts firing a volley of key blasts at Tamagami 2. So they're jumping back and forth between the two fights, but it's so well choreographed and well done that it's actually very easy to follow and very satisfying. This style of jumping back and forth to me feels better and more natural than it did in the previous episode where it was jumping from a fight to exposition. Fight to exposition. Not really the same sort of high level energy. This time they did a lot better, in my opinion. Tamagami 2 fires back with a serious blast that sends Vegeta flying into the ocean. Vegeta then tries to swim out, but is unable to because the Kraken that is charging towards him is sucking in all the water. So then Vegeta decides to fly out with his ki instead. He escapes the reach of the Kraken, but as he's clearing the water and he's still mildly distracted, Tamagami 2 smacks Vegeta away amidst the distraction, and Vegeta flies in the direction of the Kraken, who is now emerged out of the water, and swallows Vegeta whole and falls back into the ocean. And that's where the episode ends. It was getting really good, and then the episode comes to a screeching halt, which I'm not upset by because it was a pretty well done episode, but man, do I want more. Obviously, Vegeta is not dead. We know this. We know Vegeta's not going to die. The question really is, how is he going to come out? Is he going to break through the Kraken and kill him? Is he going to pry his teeth open and just fly out? Is he going to go Super Saiyan and cause some sort of an explosion? Could we see a Daima-sized, childlike final explosion? Kitty explosion? I don't know. I just really want to see how Vegeta's going to actually come back out. I think Vegeta's ultimately going to beat Tamagami 2. Just the question is, how's he going to do it? I like the episode. This episode gave me more of the fighting with less of the lore building, with just enough to keep me shocked. I think that the Katat's name reveal for the nameless Namekian was a satisfying payoff, somewhat, just because it's sort of been a thing that's lingered in our minds for years. But it doesn't really do much more than that. It was kind of just like a nice little bow that they tied up randomly. I don't know. I feel like I was supposed to feel more from that, but I didn't. What I really felt more from was the battle sequence, switching between Do and Vegeta as they're both kind of doing their own thing against their respective Tamagami enemies. The similarities, the parallels was actually very fun. Inevitably, Vegeta is going to beat Tamagami 2 and Do is going to beat Tamagami 1. And if not Do, maybe the combination of Do and Dooku, they'll beat Tamagami 1. But the battle for the Dragon Balls, how is that going to manifest at the 11th hour? 2 Dragon Balls for the Z Fighters versus the 1 or maybe none for the evil guys. Granted, there are multiple factions of evil guys. So how is that going to play out? That's now I'm probably thinking is going to be the new interesting thing that we have to look forward to. Because now that the group is together, besides Vegeta going Super Saiyan, besides us seeing the fusion payoff, narratively, I don't see there being anything else. The double cross reveal and then the actual like climactic part. So yeah, I mean, I got enough lore here to have me chirping for days. maybe I could use a little bit more answers. Maybe if we could meet Rymus and we can learn a little bit more about him, I think I'd be okay with that. But yeah, this was a good chaser to help digest the last episode. And I'm gonna give this one a B+. So B for episode 10, B+ for episode 11. Both are good. I like them. Did you? Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments if there's anything that I missed. I did have to somewhat compress this video and fit both of the reviews into one. It's a little bit longer, but it could have been way worse. So if there's anything that I missed, feel free to share. If there's any references or Easter eggs that I did not pick up on, feel free to let me know. If there's any voice actors that I would have known about, but I just simply forgot to point out, feel free to share those as well. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Always remember to Daima responsibly.